The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, not to the wedding. I want to be precise about that from the beginning, because precision matters here, and the distinction between what I received and what I had expected to receive is the first thread of a story that unravels everything, if you pull it correctly. What arrived was an uninvitation, a card printed on the same heavy cream stock as the wedding stationery, in the same elegant serif font my sister had chosen for all her wedding correspondence. My name at the top, 3 sentences. The third one, the kind that arrives like a physical force, even when you have been, in some quiet part of yourself, half expecting it. We feel it is best, for the harmony of the day, that you do not attend. We, not my sister's handwriting, not my sister's phrasing. The particular corporate smooth language of a man who had been writing my sister's communications for her since approximately the 3rd month of their relationship, when I had first noticed the shift in her vocabulary and the contraction of the space she occupied in her own life. The man was named Callum Brent. He was 38 years old, a commercial litigator with a corner office and the specific social confidence of someone who had never been seriously challenged by anyone he considered beneath him. He had decided, somewhere in the 14 months of their engagement, that I was a threat. He was not wrong. My name is Josephine Mercer. I am 32 years old, and this is the story of how I attended a wedding I was banned from, and what I brought with me when I came. My sister Addie was 4 years younger than me and had been, for her entire life, the version of a Mercer daughter that the world found easiest to love. Not because she was less complicated than me. She wasn't. Not because she was more careful. She was impulsive in ways that had always required a counterweight, but because her warmth was visible and immediate, and arrived without the perimeter of guardedness that mine required time to move through. She collected people. She made rooms feel inhabited. She had, from childhood, been the center of any gathering she occupied, not through performance, but through a genuine, radiating quality of presence that people moved toward without deciding to. I had spent my whole life as her counterweight, her groundedness, her reality check, her person who told her the things that were true when the things that were true were not what she wanted to hear. For 28 years, she had wanted to hear them. Then Callum arrived, and the counterweight became an inconvenience. The shift was gradual enough that I had doubted my own perception of it for the first several months. A cancelled lunch here, a shortened call there. The specific texture of a conversation with someone who is listening on the surface while managing you underneath. I had known Addie's listening for 28 years. This was a different listening. By month 8 of the relationship, I had stopped doubting my perception and started paying a different kind of attention. What I found, when I paid that attention, was not what I had expected. I had expected, if anything, the ordinary profile of a controlling relationship, the isolation tactics, the manufactured conflicts, the slow rearrangement of a person's world around a single center. And those things were present. I was not wrong about the shift or its source. What I had not expected was the other thing. The other thing had come to me through a conversation I was not supposed to be part of, a phone call I had taken at my sister's apartment 6 months before the wedding, looking for a pen in the kitchen drawer that turned out to contain a voicemail on her kitchen landline that she had apparently not yet heard. The voice was a woman's. Controlled, precise. The voice of someone who has thought carefully about what she is going to say before saying it. Callum, this is Dr. Hargrove at the clinic. I'm following up on the genetic results we discussed. I want to make sure you understand the implications before the conversation with Nadia. Please call me back directly. Nadia, not Addie, Nadia. I had stood in my sister's kitchen for a long time. Then I had done what I had spent 32 years doing in complicated situations. I had been careful, I had not acted immediately. I had not confronted Addie with a voicemail I could not fully explain. I had gathered information with the methodical patience of someone who understood that incomplete information, acted on too quickly, causes more damage than the original wound. Over the following 4 months, I had gathered complete information. Nadia Callum was a woman in Phoenix, Arizona. She and Callum had been in a relationship for 3 years. A relationship that overlapped entirely with his relationship with my sister. She was 29. She had a daughter who was 14 months old at the time I found her. She had believed, until approximately 8 months before my sister's wedding, that Callum intended to marry her. The genetic test Dr. Hargrove had referenced was a paternity test. Callum had disputed the child's paternity. The results had been unambiguous. The child was his. He had a 14-month-old daughter in Phoenix whom he was actively contesting in a family court proceeding while planning a wedding in Seattle with my sister. Nadia did not know about the wedding. My sister did not know about Nadia. I had known for 4 months. I had not told Addie immediately because I had needed to be certain, absolutely, documentarily certain, before I brought her a truth this large. I had needed the records, the court filings, the documentation that would make what I was telling her undeniable rather than accusation. I had been 2 weeks from being certain enough when the uninvitation arrived. The uninvitation, in other words, was not a complication. It was an acceleration. I called Addie the morning after the card arrived. She answered with the specific careful warmth of a person managing someone they love at a distance, present enough to be kind, reserved enough to hold the position that had been established for them. "Joe," she said. "Did you get—" "Yes," I said. "I got it." A pause. "I'm sorry," she said. And she meant it. I could hear the genuine texture of apology underneath the managed delivery. "Callum feels that you and he have had some tension, and he thinks the day will be smoother." "Addie," I said, "I need to tell you something. Not on the phone. In person. I don't think that's about Callum," I said. "About something I found out 4 months ago that I have been verifying because I needed to be sure before I told you. I'm sure now." A silence. "What kind of something?" she said. Her voice had changed. "The kind you need to hear before Saturday," I said. "Please, Addie. One conversation. You can decide what to do with it after." She was quiet for a long moment. "Tomorrow," she said. "Lunch. Just us." I brought the documentation. I had prepared it the way I prepared everything important, in a clear, logical sequence with the primary documents first and the supporting evidence ordered behind them. Court filings. Photographs. Nadia's written statement, which she had provided willingly and with a specific devastating calm when I had contacted her and explained who I was and why I was calling. I placed the folder on the table between us. I gave Addie time to read. I watched my sister, my 28-year-old sister, who collected people and made rooms feel inhabited, and had spent 14 months planning a life with a man who had a 14-month-old daughter in Phoenix. Read the documentation that ended the version of her future she had been building. She read it twice. She closed the folder. She looked at the window for a long time. "How long have you known?" she said finally. 4 months, I said. I needed to be certain. I needed it to be something you could hold, not something you'd have to question. She nodded slowly. "Does he know you know?" she said. "No," I said. She looked at the folder. "The uninvitation," she said. "He's been managing you away from me for a year," I said. "I think he sensed I was looking. I think removing me from the wedding was about making sure I couldn't get to you before Saturday." She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "I need to think." "I know," I said. "I need." She stopped. "Don't do anything yet. Let me think." "Okay," I said. "But Addie, Saturday is in 5 days." "I know," she said. "Let me think." She called me on Friday evening, one day before the wedding. The rehearsal dinner had, I understood from the timing of her call, just ended. I'm going through with it, she said. I had not expected that. Or, I had held it as a possibility, the way you hold the possibilities you most fear, but had not fully believed it would be the one that arrived. Addie, I know what you're going to say. He has a child, I said. He is contesting that child in court. He has been lying to you for. I know, she said. Her voice was strange. Not the managed distance of the past year. Something else. Something I couldn't immediately read. I know everything you told me. I've been sitting with it for 24 hours. Then why? Because I need to do this my way, she said. Not yours. Mine. A pause. Will you come tomorrow? I was uninvited, I said. I'm inviting you back, she said. Come, bring the folder. I understood then, not everything. Not the full architecture of what my sister had decided in 24 hours of thinking. But enough. What time? I said. Ceremony starts at 2, she said. Be there at 1:45. The venue was a converted estate 40 minutes outside Seattle, the kind of property that existed specifically for the kind of wedding Callum had orchestrated. Grand, curated, expensive enough to communicate that the person who arranged it had arrived somewhere and intended to be recognized for it. 300 guests, flowers that had clearly been decided by committee. A string quartet playing something that the venue had probably played at every wedding for the past 3 years. I arrived at 1:43 in a dark dress that I had chosen for its specific quality of invisibility, present without announcing itself. I carried a bag. Inside the bag was the folder. The guests were being seated. I found a position at the back, a seat near the aisle, unobtrusive, close enough to the door that I could manage whatever came next. Callum was at the altar. He saw me. His expression, for a fraction of a second before the control reasserted itself, was the expression of a man confronting something he had been certain he had prevented. Then the music changed, and Addie came down the aisle. She was extraordinary. She was always extraordinary. It was the thing about my sister that no documentation or revelation or carefully ordered folder could touch. She walked toward Callum with the particular grace of a woman who has made a decision and is entirely at peace with it. She reached the altar. The officiant began, and at the moment, the precise, calibrated moment that my sister had chosen, which I understood now she had been calculating across 24 hours of sitting with the folder, Addie turned from the officiant and faced the 300 guests. I need to share something, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. The voice of a woman who has spent 28 years being the person who fills rooms and has decided finally to fill this one with the truth. She looked at me. I reached into my bag. I walked forward. I handed her the folder. She opened it, and she read. Clearly, without hesitation, in the carrying voice she had spent 28 years developing. The summary page I had prepared for exactly this purpose. Not the full documentation, the summary. 1 page. The facts, in plain language, in the order that made them impossible to misunderstand. The name, the child, the court filing, the dates. 300 people in a converted estate outside Seattle heard every word. Callum stood at the altar and became, over the course of 90 seconds, a different version of himself than he had been for the previous 14 months. Not the man who had written invitations on cream cardstock in elegant serif font, but something smaller and more accurate. When Addie finished reading, she closed the folder. She handed it back to me. She looked at Callum. I think we're done, she said. She turned. She walked back down the aisle, not the way she had come, not with the specific grace of a woman approaching a decision, but with something different, something I had not seen her carry in 14 months, herself. I fell into step beside her. We walked out of the estate together, into the afternoon light, and neither of us looked back. The weeks that followed were not simple. I want to be honest about that. 300 guests, A cancelled wedding. A story that moved through the social networks of everyone who had been present with the specific velocity of something too dramatic to stay contained. Callum's firm placed him on leave pending an internal review. A family court proceeding involving a child was not, it turned out, something his partners had been aware of. Nadia, who I had stayed in contact with through the process, retained a family attorney and filed for full legal recognition of Callum's parental responsibility. Adie cried for 2 weeks. Not every day. Not all the time. But the grief was real, and I sat with her through it, without trying to resolve it into something more manageable, because grief for a future you have lost does not resolve into something manageable on anyone's timeline but its own. What she said to me on one of those evenings, sitting in her apartment with takeout we were barely eating, was something I have kept. I knew something was wrong, she said. I think I knew for a long time. I just needed someone to stand close enough to the truth that I could finally see it. That's what I'm for, I said. She looked at me. I know, she said. I forgot for a while. I'm sorry. You don't need to be sorry, I said. I uninvited you from my wedding, she said. He uninvited me, I said. You invited me back. She was quiet for a moment. 1:45, she said. 1:43, actually, I said. I was early. She laughed, a real laugh, the first one in 2 weeks, the kind that starts in the chest and doesn't require any performance. I laughed too. And in the particular ordinary warmth of two sisters eating takeout in an apartment on a Thursday evening, something that had been held at a distance for 14 months came back into the room. Addie moved forward, not quickly, not without the specific difficulty of a person rebuilding a future that had been structured around someone who turned out to be someone else. But she moved. She started therapy. She started running again, something she had stopped doing in the first months with Callum. One of the many small abandonments I had watched happen and filed and hadn't known how to name at the time. She started calling me on Sundays the way she had called me on Sundays for the 28 years before the 14 months. On the first Sunday call after the estate, she said, "Tell me what you actually do at work. I've been vague about it for too long." I told her. She listened, actually listened. At the end she said, "You knew 4 months before you told me." "Yes," I said. "You spent 4 months making sure I'd have something undeniable," she said. "Yes, that's the most you think I've ever heard," she said. I thought about that. "Is that a compliment?" I said. "It's the highest one I know how to give," she said. "Before you go, I need to ask you something, because I genuinely cannot stop thinking about it. Was Addie right to wait until the altar, or should she have confronted Callum privately the moment she read the folder? Some people say the public reveal was too much. Others say he earned every second of it. Tell me what you think in the comments right now. I read every single one, and this debate has two strong sides. If this story hit something real, if you have ever had to be the one who told someone a truth they weren't ready to hear, because you loved them enough to say it anyway, hit that like button so this story finds the people who need it. Share it with someone who has a sister, a best friend, a person in their life who stands close enough to the truth that they can finally see it. And if you believe that real love sometimes looks like showing up to a wedding you were banned from with a folder full of facts, subscribe, because every week this channel tells the stories of women who did the hard thing when no one else would. Your first month of Audible is completely free. Over 500,000 titles waiting in the description below. For the truth tellers, the folder carriers, the ones who show up anyway. The link is right there. Use it.